Hi, welcome to the More You Know. We're going to be leaving off obviously, in the book of Matthew, but we are at chapter 4, and we're going to be around from verse 13 to 18, which is explaining where Jesus is preaching in Galilee. So, in Comporium, I hope I said that right. I'm not sure if I did. It means the village of Nam. It was a fishing village on the northwestern shore of Lake Galilee. Nam, I must spell it because I'm pretty sure I am messing that up, which is Nahum, which means comforted, actually. So, we know throughout the Bible, he's always going to Capernaum or to Lake Galilee to do a lot of his ministries. So here's the thing. Jesus did many miracles and based his Galilean ministries in the village of the comforted. Because, that's what Lake Galilee means. Now we're going to skip on down to like verse 16. And this Aramaic word for Galilee also means revelation of God. So Jesus was basically raised and he ministered in the land also called the revelation of God. Woohoo! We're going to go down to where, in verse 18, where he is, Simon, he has changed his name to Peter, which I'm going to spell it, obviously, because I cannot say it, is Keefa, which means the rock or pebble. And that would be the Greek version of it. When he in verse, if we go down to verse 21, a lot of people don't realize this, but James mostly translate and is substituted for the word Jacob. Both Greek and Aramaic leave the Hebrew name as it is, which is Jacob. So apparently the Hebrew name James actually means Jacob in both Greek and Aramaic. That's pretty cool. Now I'm going to say this name definitely. I'm going to almost all the pronunciations I'm going to say incorrect, just so you know. Okay, I can't even speak the American language correctly, so how am I going to be able to understand these ones? There you go. But anyway, we're going to be down in verse 21, 4:21. And this is where the two brothers, the gods of thunder, that he nicknames them the gods of thunder, where we have James and, I think it's John. Okay, where, I'm going to go ahead and spell it. Their dad's name, where it says sons of, Zebedees. I'm not sure that's what I'm saying, but it's, Zebedee. Zebedees, whatever. I can't say it correctly. But that name actually means my gift. And which is cool because when Jesus comes across them and they're in the boat with their dad, after he done told Simon, Andrew and Simon to come follow me, he passes by their boat, which he says also, come follow me. And the dad just lets him go. It's funny, his name, the dad's last name, and his name is called My Gift, which what he does is he gives Jesus the gift of both his sons. Now we all know how the firstborn and then your kids, especially male, are very important back then to establish your family thing. But not only that, as we could tell, that it seems like he was very wealthy in the fishing business because they had their own boats and they had hired help to help him take care of those boats. So for him to give off his two sons like that is very, very key here, because he just does that. And it seems like that Andrew and Simon kind of worked with him on the ownerships of the fleets that he had. And he just willingly, not only did he just give away the gift of his two sons, but then his other two, like, I guess what you would call like supervisors or managers, what would be like nowadays, or CEOs of the other parts. So he not only did he give up his two sons, but he gave up, Andrew and Peter. So there went all his mask, that has left him with just him by himself, and then to run basically the whole company at his old age. So it's pretty cool that his last name means my gift, because he gives up his 2 sons, and then, you know, another 2 sons, which was like probably family friends. When we get into chapter 18 all the way to like verse 23, that's basically where we was talking about where he walks by the boats. So that whole section is basically where Jesus calls his disciples. Well, at least he gains 4 of his disciples of the 12 anyway. But on down to verse now from all the way to the rest of chapter 4 to the end of chapter 5 is Jesus' ministry of healing, where he goes from place to place. And in verse 25, this was the first encounter that the non-Jewish people of the Middle Eastern had with Jesus. And we're going to skip on down to verse 5 now. And in 5:2, it should be noted that in Matthew 5:7, commonly known as the Sermon on the Mount, is the Torah, where he was doing the Torah, the law, and the teaching, and the construction of the kingdom of heaven. That's pretty cool. Everybody calls it the Mount of the teaching and the Mount of the sermon, but that's what it's basically saying in there in verse 2, that is their Sermon on the Mount, where he does, is also the same place where he goes and preaches to the mass thousands of people. So we're going to go down to verse 3, and it's basically saying, blessed are they. The Aramaic word, I'm going to spell it, of course, Toowayhon. It actually means to be enriched, happy, fortunate, delighted, blissful. You know, it just means highly blessed. But it also implies more. It means prosperity, abundant goodness, onto that. So was he on, not only was on the Mount Turin of doing the Sermon on the Mount, but to have the capacity to enjoy a union and communion with God. So when he gave that sermon also means that he was on the spot where everybody was going to have the union and communion with God, where I guess you kind of can communicate with God. The implication of this verse is that the poor in spirit have only one remedy, and that is in trusting God. This total reliance upon God is the doorway into the kingdom realm. Notice the 2 obvious parallel between beatitudes and humble in spirit, or poor in spirit, which means to be humble and totally dependent upon God for everything. It's synonymous with saintly, not just in the sense of those possessing nothing. It can be translated into delighted are those who have surrendered completely to God and trust only in Him. That's pretty cool. Because when he does the whole sermon, you know, on the mount, when he also does the whole thing, these come to those who are heavy laboring, you know, that whole sermon right there. It's also on that spot where it says right here, where he says, you know, the poor in spirit, trusting God, and all in the union, and all in communion with God on that same spot. And that's pretty cool. We're going to have to go to another video, part 2. Well, it's not going to be part 2. But I'm just going to say the next video for this section, for this day. Because I think it will be actually like 4 or 5.